I'm Emily Raquette, and you're watching Amplify. In this episode, I'm taking you inside ClickFunnels' annual conference, Funnel Hacking Live, where we'll meet entrepreneurs who are on top of their game so we can reverse engineer their tactics, model their mindset, and hack their success. Hi, I'm Emily Raquette here with Natalie Hodson, a successful mompreneur who's harnessed the power of vulnerability to skyrocket her business. Natalie, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, tell us a little bit about your story. How'd you get started? And then you had some major shifts that have happened in your business. We're gonna break down some of those tactics and share them with other mompreneurs.
Oh, definitely. So one of the things, and that's what I just talked about on stage, was that when I first started my business, it was really just me sharing the journey, the whole entire journey. And that's how I started to build an initial following, because I didn't feel like I had to posture myself as the expert. I was just sharing and blogging and talking about, it's like an online journal. And then what happened is, as I started to get popularity, I started to feel like, oh man, all of a sudden I have to be the expert. And so I started posturing myself as like only showing the perfect pictures, right? Like I was like that mom who I would push all my dirty dishes aside and get the perfect Instagram picture, or like I would get a picture of one child that looked really cute while the other was screaming.
We all do it. We all do it.
I know. But what happened is, because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, but what I found happened is that everything that had worked for me to build that audience that started off as they loved me because I was real and relatable and honest, then all of a sudden everything tanked, because now I was posturing myself trying to be perfect all the time. And so I went back and I tried to look at my old posts and I tried to say, well, what was it that actually created the virality of all those old posts? And I recognized that every single thing that went viral surrounded this concept of vulnerability. And so what I learned is that when you're the one being vulnerable, when you're sharing the really hard moments, it makes you feel small and scared. But when you are vulnerable to everybody else around you watching it happen, it looks brave and courageous and strong. And that vulnerability is the ultimate human connector. It's like a magnet. All of a sudden, when you start talking about things that make you feel ashamed or worthless or afraid, all of a sudden people are like, whoa. Yeah. Me too. Like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one who struggled with that, and I'm not alone. And then once people recognize that you know how they feel, they trust you. And when people trust you, they'll buy from you.
And that's something you talked a lot about here at Funnel Hacking Live, how to be vulnerable in an authentic way, because we're seeing a lot of people being vulnerable in a not very authentic way. So what are some of your tips on how we can do it, how we can be vulnerable, truly connect with our audience and our future customers in a way that's authentic?
Yeah, so, because you're right, there's this fine line between, because vulnerability, authenticity, I feel like are kind of buzzwords right now. So people are like, oh, I have to be authentic to get followers, and so it's fake, and people can sense that. And so my number one tip is that when you're actually in the moment, when you're feeling embarrassed, ashamed, afraid, write that down. Like, and it doesn't have to be full sentences, it's just shorthand. Like, I take out my phone and in the notes section, I just shorthand those real, raw emotions. Because then later, when you're in front of your computer and you're sitting trying to type something, it's really hard to recreate those like real moments. So then you can take the real raw stuff and then you can put it into sentence form. So the number one tip I have is to write it down and then strategically save it for the right time to share later.
And I love that, because so many people feel like you have to share it in the moment.
Yeah.
And I've done that sometimes. I go back and delete it real quick. So I'm like, what was I thinking? But you're saying you don't need to share it right away. In fact, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I've done both, and sometimes if I felt okay enough with what I was sharing, I would share it. But if you know that any kind of criticism is going to destroy you, then wait till you've processed it and worked through it, and then you can share it later. And then the other, so step one of this vulnerability posting process that I have is talking about those real raw moments. But you can't do that unless you've written down how you actually felt. Because my system about vulnerability, it's not about how to fake vulnerability, it's how to actually use your real emotion in your writing to connect with your customers. And so you have to share that, and then give yourself some grace, take ownership for how you got into that situation, relate it to other times in the past that you felt that way. And then the most important one is you follow up with like a positive note, right? So like how you're gonna work through this or how you worked through it, because that step 4 is really important. Because if you don't share step 4, like we all know that one person on Facebook who's like a hot mess and their whole life is unraveling in their Facebook post, and you're like, oh, like this is going to be fun to watch. And so step 4 is really important because it shows that you understand where somebody's at, you have a process for coming back, and somebody looks at it and says, whoa, like she knows how I feel, and she's giving me a solution of a way that I could possibly work through it too.
I love all this valuable information. I think it can apply to so many different types of businesses. But then everyone wants to know, how'd you go from a blogger, and it was just your hobby, to over $1 million as a legit business?
Definitely. So so that's where strategically having all these different emotional moments becomes really valuable. So what I did is I actually went through a divorce. I didn't talk about this on stage, but so I was now a single mom with no financial backing. My back was up against the wall, and I was like, okay, I have to find a way to make this work. And so what I did is I went through all my most popular blog posts over the last year, the top 5 posts, and I thought, okay, and all of them had to do with vulnerability, and I thought, okay, you know what? One of my most vulnerable posts is when I talked about how moms, after they have babies, if they laugh, cough, sneeze, jump on a trampoline, can accidentally pee their pants.
Oh yeah.
And it just happened that I had a friend who was a doctor, and I was joking with her about this, and she's like, Natalie, just because this is common doesn't mean it's normal, and it can be improved. And I was like, what? Well, first I was really defensive because I was like, okay, you have 2 10-pound babies, and then we'll talk. And then I was like, you know what if I used that moment of vulnerability where, like, I wanted to crawl in a corner, like I did not want,
because you were doing a video.
Okay, yeah. So I was filming for a company that I had called Dollar Workout Club, and I was wearing gray shorts, and the whole workout was jumping exercises, and you can see, because we don't cut, so you can see this little spot on my shorts, and throughout the workout it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and so by the end I'm like trying to stand like this to like not show it. And you know, the program that ended up making me millions of dollars, I almost didn't even, the world didn't get to see, because I had to have a real heart-to-heart with myself of like, am I willing to tell the whole world that I used to pee my pants, you know? And so because I had those feelings, those emotions saved, I was then able to use that. I worked with the doctor, we created a 4-week program that improves that, and we launched this ebook, and in 4 months we sold over $1 million of that $37 ebook. But so, you know, when it comes to monetization, you can either create a solution, right? Go back to step 4, create a solution that you can sell, or 2, use vulnerability to create that level of trust with your audience to help sell whatever product you already are selling. Because when people see the entire journey, like, it's so much more fun to cheer them on when they're having success when you've seen them down here and when you've seen their struggles. And so use Insta stories, use Snapchat, use Facebook Lives to show, you know, you have your great product, you have your website. That doesn't have to be the vulnerable part. That can be your pretty professional side. But then show the process of how that happened in behind the scenes with social media apps. And then what happens is you get your audience, they become raving fans because they experience the journey along with you, the ups and the downs. So then when you put out a new product, they want to support you, they want to buy your product.
And then here you are at ClickFunnels' annual event, Funnel Hacking Live. You're in the 2 Comma Club, meaning you made $1 million plus with a funnel, and you've made, even more importantly, massive impact.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Last year we helped over 55,000 women through my digital programs, and most of them were through abs, core, pelvic floor. And you know, that's 55,000 women that like used to think that peeing your pants was just a part of motherhood, and now they have a solution that can actually improve that. And it's 55,000 women who we've begun to start the conversation around women's bodies and women's health. And it's not just peeing your pants, that's kind of like the fun headline, but it's really talking about like the way we view our bodies and the way that we talk to ourselves and positive affirmations. And that's what goes into all my programs. So it's so cool because each one of those women are also mothers, and they then can change the way that they speak to their children and their daughters and their sons. And so knowing the impact that we've been able to have, because I didn't just crawl in a corner and hide that video clip of me peeing my pants, is pretty powerful.
Natalie, thank you so much for being vulnerable and encouraging us to do the same. How can we connect with you?
So on Facebook, Natalie Hodson Official, or my website, nataliehodson.com, and then on Instagram, I'm Natalie Hodson1, and that's HOD as in David, SON as in Nancy.
All right, we'll go follow you, and then we'll start learning and watching from what you're doing to be authentically vulnerable and scale our businesses at the same time.
Awesome. Thanks so much for this opportunity, Emily.